Hello everyone, this is Sri Revathi, Assistant Professor of English, Bishop Iber College, Trichy. Here I am going to explain a few important literary terms and devices which is gonna be important for competitive examinations like NET, SLET or GATE. Here I am going to discuss a few terms which start with letter E. The first is euphemism. Euphemism is nothing but a mild or indirect words where we can substitute for some words like harsh or blunt. For example, instead of died, we can use these kind of euphemism words like passed away. Instead of restroom, we can use comfort station. Instead of living rich, we can use bringing home the bacon. The second important term which start with letter E is epistrophe. Epistrophe is nothing but the repetition of words or phrase at the end of successive clauses or lines. Through this example, we can understand easily. See no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. Here the epistrophe no evil is repeating at the end of each line. This kind of term is called as an epistrophe, whereas anaphora is quite opposite from epistrophe. The repetition of a word or phrase at the beginning or successive clause or lines. Here the repetition of the words at the beginning of a sentence is called as anaphora, where the repetition of the words at the end of a sentence is called as an epistrophe. Come to anaphora, look at this example. It was the best of time, it was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom, it was the age of foolishness. Here here we can see this repetition. So this kind of repetition in a words or phrases is called as an anaphora. The next is eponymous. Eponymous is nothing but the name of the protagonist or any other character inside the novel is given as a name of the novel. For example, name of the protagonist is given to the name of the novels like Emma, Jane Eyre, Homer's Odysseus and Oliver Twist, etc. The next important term which start with letter E is euphoria. Euphoria is nothing but a feeling of great happiness or well-being. The next is euphonious. Please don't confuse with euphoria and euphonious. Phone is nothing but a sound. Okay, so euphonious is nothing but something sounds beautiful and pleasant. For example, we can call someone's voice as euphonious. You have a euphonious voice. Euphonious voice is nothing but something pleasant to hear. The next is epiphany. Epiphany is nothing but an experience of sudden and striking revelations. Sudden or striking thoughts in our mind is called as an epiphany. For example, this James Joyce used this term in his famous novel, A Portrait of the Artist, as a young man. The next is euphemism, not euphemism. Please don't confuse with euphemism and euphemism. This is euphemism. It was a highly elaborate way of writing. A elaborate way of writing style in a prose work is called as an euphemism, which had a very popular in the era of 1580s in drama, prose fictions, and it was first used by John Lillis in his famous work named as Euphues or the Anatomy of. The next slide I am going to deal with some other major important literary terms apart from metaphor, metonymy, simile, etc. The first is orbit. Orbit is nothing but a lyric song which laments the arrival of morning or which laments the arrival of evening is called as an orbit, and here it addresses the season here. Okay, lyric song which laments the arrival of morning. For example, Sun Rising poem which was written by John Donne. The second is bardolatry. Through this word we can understand who he is trying to address. Bardolatry. Bard is nothing but a poet. Poet is nothing but a famous writer who was called as Bard of Avon. The second important term is bardolatry. Through this term we can identify who is the Bard of Avon, who are named as William Shakespeare. Okay, so this term was actually coined by G.B. Shaw. Bardolatry is nothing but a greatest fan of Shakespeare and his writings. Excessive admiration on Shakespeare writing. For example, Ben Jonson, he was identify himself was a great fan of William Shakespeare, and he called Shakespeare as I love the man and I do honor his memory. On this side, idolatry as much as any. He considers Shakespeare as his own idolatry. The next important term is Bowdlerism. This term was coined by a famous writer named as Thomas Bowdler, who censored the works of Shakespeare and he removed some phrases or passages that is considered to be a vulgar or offensive and wrote a book under the title The Family Shakespeare, which was published in the year 1818. The next important term was chapbook. Chapbook is nothing but a cheaply printed centered books which deal with normal story, also called as GALF or pulp fiction. The next is chicklet literature. Chicklet literature was a popular fiction in the year of 1990s and 2000 which targeted at women-centered around female protagonists and marketed towards among the young women writers. Example, Bridget Jones' Diary, which was published in the year 1996. The next is lad literature, which is quite opposite to chicklet literature. Chicklet literature which deals among the women-centered, which deals among the women writers and their livelihoods. Whereas this lad literature which is about the male authored popular novels which is published. The next is lad literature which is quite opposite to chicklet literature. Lad literature is a male authored popular novels which was very popular in the year 1990s and 2010s, which talks about the young men and their emotional and personal lives. For example, we have Nick Hornby's How to Be Good. The last is closet drama. Closet drama is nothing but a drama which is intended to be read rather than to be performed on the stage. Drama intended to read rather than to act. For example, we have John Milton's Samson Agonistus and Byron's Manfred, P.B. Shelley's Prometheus Unbound and Ernest's Empedocles on Etna. Thank you.